A secular India shouldn't be based upon subverting or dominating the Hindus and not giving them equal rights.
There are people who argue that the Ram Temple compromises the secular culture of 21st century India. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, let's go back to the actual history. In 1947, India was divided into a Hindu majority India and a Muslim majority Pakistan. The Muslims were given a separate state because they said, we either don't want to or we can't live with Hindus. Now, if we look at the history from there, the Hindus have basically had very little rights in Pakistan, very little representation, and now are only a marginal community that is frequently under attack, whether it's the daughters being taken away, whether it's no representation in any media or government levels. Then in India, after 1947, of course, Hindus were expecting that some of their values, traditions, and customs would be honored. Gandhi himself said he was a proud Hindu. And so the issue of temples came up. And again, this was not something new. Even in the Maratha era, remember, Marathas dominated India when the British came. The Marathas had already begun restoring and renovating Hindu temples and looking at sacred sites like Kashi Vishwanath and Ayodhya. So there was a natural aspiration that a few, at least, of our ancient sacred sites, which were of tremendous historical as well as cultural value, would be restored. And of that, Ram Janmabhoomi was the main or the number one considered. Now, even the other Indians brought it up, politicians, Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel was, of course, a Congress leader. He could have been there instead of Nehru, except Gandhi asked him to step down in favor of Nehru. And he asked for this too, and he was able to bring the Somnath temple back. But the Nehru-based government would not give it government support. It kind of tolerated it. And then there are no more Hindu temples were considered or brought back, even ones that had been known for centuries, and even ones, the history of them being destroyed by Aurangzeb, etc., was well known. So a secular India shouldn't be based upon subverting or dominating the Hindus and not giving them equal rights. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, great new mosques were put up, government support. Now, going a little further forward, even the textbooks in India were largely written by Marxists, and they gave a very negative view of Hinduism overall. They did not honor it as a great tradition, and they downplayed the Hindu temple issues and said anyone who raises them is merely a politician. But I think that is quite wrong. That aspiration was natural. It should have been addressed then. Can you imagine if Ram Janmabhoomi and a few other major temples were given back to the Hindus 1947 to 1950, they would have not been an issue at all. They would have be viewed as India as a Hindu majority state, which honors that majority. That doesn't mean Hindus would then go on to take over many other temples or oppress Muslims. It means that basic right and civilizational identity. Ram is also a figure of the Buddhist and also the Jains and also the Sikhs. And even some of the Sufis have taken up aspects of the Ram tradition. So we can't just look at it as a narrow religious identity. And Ram is avatar of Dharma. So what that means is if you want to honor India civilizationally, you really cannot give honor to something like Sri Ram and Ram Janmabhoomi.
So two questions emanating from what you just said. The first, and I'm assuming you'll give me a short answer to that, is there was a Muslim majority Pakistan, but India was not called a Hindu nation. It was always a secular nation as opposed to a Muslim country, Pakistan. So therein lies the difference, and therefore the various acts that came into being to sort of leave status quo as it is and not try and dig up old wounds.
The status quo was created by the British, so you were basically making what the British had done with Hindu temples the law for the future of India. Now, the United States also has a national cathedral and is a Christian majority country, but it doesn't look down upon its own traditions the same way. So I think that secularism was misinterpreted and taken too far. You'll notice that the secular countries of Eastern Europe, like Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, when they received their independence from the Turkish rule, often as late as the early 20th century, they restored a number of their old churches, and they felt that was part of independence.
So are you saying that the term secularism is perhaps being misused by the opponents of Ram Temple here in India?
Absolutely. And secularism in the West was meant to remove the Catholic Church's control over the national governments, so that nothing like that was an issue on the India side. And there wasn't even any gathering to consider what the Hindu religious leaders thought. This was kind of uniformly imposed upon the population.